We have 4 publishers, and this panel is dedicated to the questions from the audience. So I hope all of you have questions to the publishers and interested in publishing. If not, we have some selections of the questions that we get from Facebook community and our social medias. First, I want to introduce the publishers. And then when you have a question, just raise your hand at any point of the discussion. I will just know that you have a question, and when it will be stopped, I will just ask you, okay? Sounds good? Can you say yes if it sounds good? Cool. Okay, I just want you to say who you are, what you're doing, and maybe 2 things you want everyone to remember about you and about your publishing. Okay, let's start from you, Falko.
Yeah, hi, I'm Falko Boecker from Flaregames. We are a mobile free-to-play game publisher, and I'm a senior developer relations manager, so I'm the one in contact with the development studios looking at new games that might be interesting for us to publish.
Hey, I'm Calderon, CEO of Game Jam, previously CRO at Ketchup. I was acquired by Ubisoft, and before that, I was a VP of Revenue and Marketing at Dots. I publish and develop hyper-casual games.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm from ZeptoLab. We are also free-to-play mobile publishers, and also we develop our own games.
Hi, I'm Omar from Spilgames. I license and publish games. I do all free-to-play, but also portals. Yeah, that's about it. You can ask questions later about it.
So yesterday we had a publisher's page, and you saw like at least 30 games. There were like 12 publishers, and now we have 4 of them here in the panel. And I saw some confusion before developers and publishers. You know, maybe some were shy, maybe some were not that experienced. So can you tell us what should a good pitch look like? What do you expect from that? And what are the main mistakes you don't want developers to repeat again? Just really quickly, what do you expect from a pitch?
Quick and to the point, like in the beginning, really upfront about what you want, what your needs are, and how you're going to use that. So if you need money, what are the use of proceeds? How are you going to use the money? And then I personally like to know more about the team and the types of games that they're making now and the types of games they want to make in the future and their end goal.
Yeah, so one of the things that happened yesterday that actually shocked me, or in a good way, was that some of the developers that I knew, we knew we had synergy, there was something in common. I was hoping to get back to them in a later date, but actually they approached me today. And what I like about that is, like, when you have a partnership or you're publishing, you're not only talking about a game, you're actually kind of marrying each other in a way. And this relationship starts somewhere. And when these guys came, they had 2 minutes to talk to me, right? And then today, they just saw me like sitting there on my phone. It's like, hey, remember I showed you my game? I'm like, yes. But then when they showed me again, I was like, oh, can you please actually send me this now? And I know I'm going to sign this guy up. Hopefully he's not here yet. But yeah, but the thing is, like, he had that intuition of like, okay, I really think this is going to work. So this is the things that, as Christian said, is very important. It's not only how much money am I going to get for this deal. It's like you have to think a little bit further, like not only this deal, but can we work for more titles and like actually become one?
As for me, I think 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes is very little time to know each other. So it's good to focus on your product, because if the product is good, we will find each other later and speak more complicated about this product and this team, and maybe not about this game, but about your next games.
Thanks. I have a question. So you think that 3 minutes is not enough, but it was during the pitch. But if there is like, just a pitch, just a general pitch, you're at the conference and you receive an email, or you just meet someone and say, hey, Mike, I have a game. So during how long do you want them to pitch the game? Do you want them to spend half an hour next to you?
No, it's quite enough to see is it interesting for me or not. And the main purpose of the developer is to make wow effect. Wow, I will remember this game, and I will come later and I'll find you. Don't try to hide, I will find you.
So how much time does developer have to get your attention with their game, with their product?
To tell you the truth, it's enough 1 minute, because I see it's quite enough 1 minute to understand, is it my game, or can it be my game or not?
Is it only Mike's opinion, or others also think the same way? So,
definitely the elevator pitch works, and when you have so many developers at the same time, I think it's great, because it it creates like, I get to see, how many was it, 28, 30 games yesterday in 2 minutes each. So it really helps, because then you siphon a lot of people that will never have talked to if they didn't talk to me first. So 2 minutes, I even think a minute is fine.
Just front load the important information. It's like what platform, what genre, and I'm happy to talk to you about your game for 50 minutes, half an hour, no problem. If like if I'm interested, you will feel that in the conversation that we'll ask more questions and I want to go deeper. But if you start explaining some intricate systems that you have in the game that you think are creative, and then later I learn it's a PC game, but I'm a mobile publisher, then I'm like, you wasted your time, I wasted my time. Like get to the point early on, but if it's great and if I'm excited, I want to talk to you longer about it and find out more.
And also, I think it will be good if you try to spend some time to take feedback from the publisher, because sometimes I even have no time to say say anything about the game, because developers come to me, say blah 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 blah, developers go away, and what happens? I wonder.
Okay, and the other question is, at what stage should developer pitch a game to a publisher?
It depends on the publisher, really, I think.
Can you tell us about your experience, like at Ketchup and now GameJam?
So at Ketchup, we wanted to see games basically that were ready to go. Now at GameJam, I kind of want to see games more early on, just because my approach is slightly different now, where I'm actually working on the games and doing things.
But early on, is it like a prototype or working beta?
Prototype, like first week of development.
Okay.
And with hyper-casual games in general, games are typically developed very fast. So in a week, you can actually get a lot done.
Something that, not from my experience with a publisher, but with a developer before, was that sometimes we showed very early pitches to publishers that weren't interested in early prototypes or concepts for the original IP games that we did, but they acquired some big IP for like some game or movie somewhere else, and then they remembered that, hey, those guys had a concept that was a great fit for that, and then came back to us. So even if the publisher is willing to listen to your pitch, even though it's not the state they're looking for, you can still get something out of that later on.
But at what stage do you, like as Flaregames?
So for Flaregames, we're looking for things that we call an MVP, a product that we can do some testing with, where we say it has maybe 5 days of content and a little bit of a tutorial, so we can see if people are actually interested in that kind of core gameplay, and if we are the right publisher in advertising that game, and then we have less of a problem funding the rest of the development from that point.
Mike?
So I just want to say a quick thing. For hyper-casual games in particular, one of the things you have to be careful about is you have to trust actually the publisher. So if you show them early games to many different publishers, there's a chance that game could get ripped off. So it's something that actually happens a lot, and it's been happening more and more frequently in the industry. So that's another thing you want to be careful about when you're showing your games. Make sure you trust the publisher, or you have some kind of NDA signed or something like that, if you want to protect yourself from that.
We'll come back to that later.
As we are looking for mid-core games with long-term retention, I think the best way to come to us as a publisher will be verticals-wise with deep presentation of monetization and high-end content. So you must understand that sometimes publishers have their own opinion about the future of the game and about what features you must implement in this game, and you must have time to do it. But you mustn't come to publisher, I think, is when your game is already global launch. It's a very common situation in my experience, and I think you mustn't come when your game is only on the stage of idea, because we have a lot of ideas ourselves, and ideas, it's not what we are looking for.
Yeah, on my side, I will say definitely ideas no. If you have a MVP, that's great. I also believe that between the MVP that I can test, I can see how is it fun, is it what we're looking for, and I also believe that having a let's say, a full product sometimes is harder to work because I need to take the bells and whistles that you put on because it doesn't work at the end because you thought that maybe the monetization works for you, but as my company will not work to, I don't know, cross promotion or whatever. So in any of these stages, it really doesn't matter because if I like you, I'll make sure it works. But if you have a finished product you just want to launch and you have been sitting on it for a year, there might be a reason why you've been sitting on it for a year, right? For us, it's very important to, I think for all of us, is like, does it make sense? So it's always finding the right publisher for you, and also for us is the right developer.
The other question that I recently heard is that to soft launch or not to soft launch the game before approaching the publisher. So what is your experience in that?
That's a great question that we are actually doing now. We have, in the past 4 months, made 40 games, well, bought and developed ourselves. And we noticed 2 things, right? Yes, it's good to soft launch with you trying to see the metrics on it. But if I know that the product is already a hyper casual game, I prefer to, this is my case, I'm not saying for everyone else. We notice that if we launch it, it's easier for us to kind of tweak it easier than just soft launch it. If it's like a mid-core, I'm talking here about hyper casual games. So if it's mid-core, maybe it's different. For me, definitely just global launch. Like, just do it. Like, there's no point anymore. I can tweak it. I have enough tools to basically, without setting a new build, I can change it. So for me, at least, it's global launch.
It's really a great stage when developers came to publishers with real metrics of their game, but in my experience, I met the situation when analytic tools are not implemented correctly, and maybe sometimes developers even don't know how to implement these tools and how to what to do with this data. So we prefer to make a soft launch together with developers because we use the right analytic and we use our analysis team for soft launch and we use our source of traffic. So as for us, it's better to go to soft launch together.
Yes, this is interesting. So like actually a couple years ago when we were first making hyper-casual games at Ketchup, we actually never soft launched anything, we would just launch it. And this worked for a long time, a couple of years, it was a long time for this industry. And then we had a competitor come along that started doing a lot of user acquisition. And because of this, it kind of changed how we processed, how we thought about launching games, because if you are planning to do user acquisition or something like that, you know it needs to be profitable. It's a math equation, right? So you should test your game before you launch it. It's actually stupid not to if you're going to spend money to advertise your game and you don't know if it's going to be profitable or not. So that has, I think, changed a lot over the last couple of years. But for me, I test everything really early on. Within the first week, I want to test things, and I'm always testing for different things in different countries. And so yes, 100% soft launch or test.
Yeah, for us, it's also a bit different because our games are usually bigger 3D projects that take a year and a half, 2 years to make. So and we launch way less games. We launch 5-6 games a year max right now. So for us, soft launch is extremely important to do it early on when you still don't have all of these features and content developed, because you can steer a little bit in one direction or the other depending on users. For user acquisition, it's important, like you said, to see like, hey, what groups does it work with, and what groups doesn't it work with, and how to optimize that. I kind of like what you said. I agree with the tracking. I like to see some data from some developers, but we will always do another soft launch together to verify that within our systems and our interpretations. But I don't have a problem with soft launch. I'm happy if the developer has something that is far along to soft launch. I encourage everybody to launch early in smaller territories to get some data and get some better understanding of your users. But for our kind of games, they become a lot less interesting after a global launch, because we plan bigger campaigns with a lot of featuring supports from the platforms. That's very important for these bigger kind of games. And platforms are very much so less interested in the game once it's already launched to have like a big feature again.
Falko, I have a question for you. So you said that you don't mind for the soft launch because you want to see some numbers. So do you understand that if developer reach a publisher, he expects publisher to take care of all the marketing and numbers? How can they do that? Do you understand that numbers won't be really good?
All right, so for us, it depends on the publisher. If a publisher is only interested in finished versions, then you of course will have you have the opportunity to collect some numbers at least. We as a publisher are interested in games earlier, so if you don't have any numbers by yourself, that's okay for us. We'll find that out with you together. And it's more about picking the right partner for you. So if it's a publisher that is only looking for almost finished games, you will always have to come up with something yourself. And these days, since there's a big boom in self-publishing, I mean, it's getting super crazy difficult right now because the market is so competitive. But the tools are there for you to try that out, to have to implement some tracking or do some ad campaigns.
But what numbers are good? What retention is good for you to publish?
That depends so much on the genre. For example, an idle game, if you don't have 55-60% day one retention, then I'm probably not that interested. If your monetization is crap at that stage, I don't really care because I know that we have fixed that in the past. There's something we can do about it. But if retention doesn't work in an idle game, that's something you're never going to fix. In other games, it might be the other way around.
One more thing that I must tell about soft launch. Soft launch is very available stage. It's not only the stage where you can get your first metrics, but it is the stage where you can improve it. And sometimes it takes a long time for us, for our publishing games or our own games. Sometimes it takes about a year to make soft launch. We make some iteration, we change something, when we test, and when we find another problem, we solve this problem. And so there are a lot of iterations. And I think in this stage you must work with a good product team, and it is a good idea to use a publisher's product team in this stage.
I want to say something about what we do that really helped us, what Yuliya said about the numbers, because you basically are letting us take care of the numbers. When you sign up with us, we give you a game development guide, which basically gives you all the things that we need. We send you the plugins that we need. So you really just have to follow the instructions, and then we take care from there. So, meaning that you send us the build with all these, GDPR compliant, all these things that you probably have lots of questions about. You don't have to know, but I wanted to make it quicker for you, right? And for me too. So this is where, this is why we don't soft launch, because we know at the moment you send it to us, we make a small test and then we just go global, because we know that we can test it with different Unity or different things that we can change in the game without sending a new build.
Based on your great experience, could you please name several things, I don't know, maybe 5 main things that we can find in every company that was successful in collaboration with your companies? Not in products, but in companies. I don't know, maybe some key features in DNA of these companies.
So I think it boils down to the people. Are they hardworking? Will they, especially in hyper casual, we're making games really fast. Can they power through it? Are they open to change and feedback? That's also important. And are they flexible enough to kind of ride through it with you? So for example, like a partner that's like a developer that's like always messaging you all the time, hey, what's going on? Why isn't my game number 1? It's like, well, okay, come on. Like sometimes we can't, control that. But someone that's like going to kind of understand what's happening, maybe a little more compassionate, I think. But like hardworking, open to change, and just kind of like a good, nice person, I think is 3 qualities I look at. In terms of like the games, I don't think there's really any like particular feature that I'm looking for. Again, like the KPIs only matter if to me, if we're like making an investment, like to promote the game. So I'll give you a quick example. Like when we first were launching games at Ketchup, we actually never looked at the KPIs. it was all about the fun of the game. We would play the game, and if the game was fun, we would launch it because we didn't have any CPI cost because we were cross-promoting. So we had a 0 CPI, so the KPIs for us didn't really matter so much, and it was mostly about the fun. Now it's changed a little bit. The market's not like that anymore. So it's more about the KPIs now, and because it's getting more competitive and we're spending money to promote games, the KPIs matter a little bit more. So to improve a game, like you'll never make a game and within a week, I mean, maybe there's a 0.001% chance you'll have like amazing KPIs, right? It takes hard work to kind of like bring it up. And so you have to be open to change and flexible and hardworking to work through it, to try to raise and increase your metrics, and that takes hard work and flexibility.
Yeah, I think something that is kind of like included in your message is like long-term thinking. It's like you're not making a game that will be done at that point when it comes out, and then you're never revisited again. Especially for the bigger ones, it's even more because you have to add features over the next 3-4 years. If you're like just want to be done with the game, then maybe that's probably a team where it will not work out, because at some point this will come up that we see there's a difference in understanding. And also, not only think about your game as on the game side, but also on the business side. It's like, how will that make money? With hyper-casual games, it may be a little bit different because you have this wealth of users already where you can cross-promote from one game to the other, where it's the core fun of the gameplay. The game is much more important. But for these longer kind of games where you have to do user acquisition, it has to work on a financial level as well. And I mean, if you work with a publisher with this kind of game, one of your big expectations is that publisher will spend money marketing that game, but we can only spend money on the game if the users will eventually spend more than that, right? Like sometimes developers are scared, like, hey, how much money will you spend on my game in user acquisition? What I tell you is like, for me, that number doesn't matter. I can give you any number. I can tell you 500,000, a million, 5 million euros in user acquisition. For me, it's important that I make that back, because if I don't make it back, I will not spend €1 on that game.
So you're all publishers. You have a huge experience. You worked for different publishing companies. You know how it works. Let's just imagine for a second that you're developers right now, and you're looking for a publisher. So what metrics should you consider to choose the right publisher? I want to hear everyone.
All right. One of the things I will start is like, how big is their legal team? Honestly. Also, really, if you look at your game and you look at their portfolio, does it really sink in? Maybe you have something new. You're like, look, this will definitely work in your portfolio. You're not seeing it, right? So that will be the second thing. And the third thing that I would want to see is, I keep repeating, like, if I'm a developer, I want to make sure that my game is successful, right? And this is your baby. This is what you've been working for a long time. So one of the things is like, what am I letting go to? So am I letting go of everything? Do I still have some control? So those are the three things for me that I will look if I was a developer.
I absolutely agree, and I can add that first of all, I will try to find in the publisher the competitions which I have no in my own team. So maybe I have a good producer and good product vision and good coders, but I have no localization, or I have no good quality expertise, or I have no enough marketing budget. So I'll try to find the right publisher which have these competitions and can help me. And also, absolutely agree with it. I'll try to find publishers with good success stories. So it's my own game, it's my own life, and I can't afford to myself to spend it to wrong publisher.
Except success stories and successful project, what else should they look at?
They have enough money for marketing, they have enough experience.
How can you know that they have enough money? Are there any metrics they should consider?
You know, it's quite easy to understand how much their games earn using App Pioneer or Sensor Tower or some other. You just even can look at the top in App Stores and Google Play, and if you see the game there, it's all everything okay with them.
There's also press. So like, for example, like, you know, Voodoo raised, I don't know, 200, 400 million, something like that. Apple raised 400 million, maybe more. So there's precedence around big publishers who have cash. The thing that I look for is that they must have the cash if they're going to spend money in user acquisition, because it's somewhat of an arms race. The other thing that I look at is the publisher needs a track record of demonstrating, for me, hyper-casual hits, lots and lots of hits, lots and lots of #1 games. The other thing I look for is very similar to what was said earlier around the legal team. I wouldn't want a 100-page contract to sign with a publisher where I have to send them all my games for the next 10 years and I can't work with anybody else. That is just ridiculous. So the contract has to be reasonable. Maybe a couple pages, like totally reasonable. I think those are the three. And then the fourth is like, are they trustworthy? Like, can you work with them? Are they going to copy your games, like, and give them to somebody else? Or are they going to work with you through this game and help you improve it? So I think those are really important things.
Is that an information you get from press, or how can you get this information, whether they're going to copy your game or not?
Just look at the games that they've published and see if they've clearly, I mean, some games are clearly copied, like from other developers. I mean, in hyper-casual, we borrow a lot of mechanics, and it's now considered like a new form of contemporary game design to borrow things from other games, which is an accepted practice. But there are some things that are blatant rip-offs and blatant copies. And so if the publisher's doing this, what makes you think that they won't copy your game? Like, if you have a small team, you're only 1-2 people, and it's going to take you 2 weeks to finish this game, and they have 40 people developing the game, what makes you think that they won't develop that game in 2 days and launch it faster, rather than work with you, teach you to go through and make this game and improve it over a couple of weeks or a couple of months? It's very possible that they could just make that game themselves in a couple of days.
And just talk to other studios they work with, both the successful and the non-successful ones. You want to talk to the ones where everything went great, and like, how does that work out? How does the communication work? Yes, most developers will be under NDA, but they can still talk about just general how it goes. And then look for the games that popped up on the radar and then disappeared right away, and like, what happened there? Reach out to that studio and see how that experience was. Like, for us, it's very important that if we launch or test something with a studio and it doesn't work right, that the studio is still happy, or, well, not necessarily excited, but satisfied with what happened there and didn't feel cheated, and would come to us with their next game as well. If you have a publisher where everybody tells you like, we're never going to work with those guys as well, you probably don't want to work with them.
Hi, seeing as you're from abroad, and let's say developers in Serbia, there's a big time difference, 8 hours more maybe. What are some difficulties and how to overcome those difficulties? Because, okay, you can email, you can like Slack, but it's not real time, or if it is, it's problematic for one of the sides, right?
So it depends on the publisher and how big the team around that game is. We had some studios from San Francisco that we worked with, which is like a 9-hour time difference, I think, most of the year. We basically had a bunch of people that shifted their working time a little bit towards that. But it can also be an advantage where you can kind of work on a project around the clock, right? Like one part of the team is in bed, the other one is like improving everything and preparing stuff for the other team to work on once they're back in the office. But you have to try and figure out that there's a little bit of overlap, and some publishers will be averse to that if the difference is too big.
One of the things we do is we, at the end or in the beginning, we actually fly you in to our studio, or we fly someone from our studio to you, our producer, to help you out. So yes, there's always the emails, but then there's always that point where it's a critical mass that you need to work together. So we don't mind. I mean, we work with you, right? For us, it's so we always make sure that you come or we go to your studio.
How deep are you involved in the game design process? Do you suggest some new features based on your previous successes and stuff?
That's a great question. So what we'd really like, I will let you guys talk to, is we'd love like that when you're creative enough. So we give you some feedback. We just will give you feedback, right? It's up to you, it's your game. But it's really interesting to not only change those things. You're like, what about we do this? and we change something else. You can look, for example, Trollface Quest, one of our games. This guy is always coming up with crazy ideas, and sometimes we have to say, calm down, but please don't calm down too much, you know? So.
For me, it's based on the metrics. So if whatever the KPIs are, you might need to add something to the metagame. Usually the core game is not influenced or changed, but depending on what the KPIs are, there might be features or things that influence the game design at some level to help increase day 7 retention, for example. That's a very common problem. And so we might come up with some mechanics around that and test those.
Like, when is the earliest point that you can contact the publisher? Like, what stage should your game be in before you contact the publisher?
I think it's a little bit different from when are we interested as a publisher to work with you. That is different from every publisher to another. When is the first point you can contact me with something? At all times. I will never say, oh, I've seen this earlier and another stage, I'm not interested anymore now. I will just tell you feedback as good as I can, and I will be upfront and say, like, this is not the right stage for us now to work together. But I think it's never too early to contact it.
Okay, cool.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you.